Hanna-Barbera cartoon canon is, to put it mildly, huge, and contains a lot of characters and elements that could probably be whole episodes on their own. But mostly because I'm not quite ready to do another month-long series right now, my plan here is to show you just how much of the TV is weird phenomenon is due to characters and franchises living through decades and decades of social and pop cultural change by following the strange evolution of the character we talked about last week, Yogi Bear. Yogi Bear actually debuted as a supporting character on the Huckleberry Hound show in 1958, but he became so popular, easily the most popular of Hanna-Barbera's first wave of cartoons, that he got his own show in 1961. This is the version of the character most people recognize, Yogi and Boo Boo as talking bears causing mischief for Ranger Smith in Jellystone Park. What people forget about Yogi is that at the time, everything about his scenario was incredibly modern and current for a kids' TV show. While the Disney and Looney Tunes characters still largely reflected the cultural reference points of the 30s and 40s, Yogi was fairly up to date. The idea of camping as a recreational middle-class activity in places like Yellowstone was a fairly new concept to the American psyche at the time, and the notion of wild animals like bears having to share a managed wilderness with visiting humans was a fresh take on the old Bugs vs. Elmer routine. Yogi's popularity bled over into pretty much all of Hanna-Barbera's talking animal cartoons, and even though most of them only ran for 1 or 2 seasons worth of episodes, they were able to be repackaged and syndicated in reruns for years to come. For a while there, even characters that now register as fairly obscure like Snagglepuss, Yacky Doodle, Augie Doggy, or Pixie and Dixie were household names. And in 1964, Yogi himself was so popular that the feature film Hey There, It's Yogi Bear debuted in theaters, marking the first time ever that a television cartoon had spun off into a theatrical movie. Though Hey There would be the last new Yogi Bear appearance for a decade, he was kept alive and remained popular through syndication and the omnipresence of the staggering number of shows Hanna-Barbera produced throughout the 60s. And then, in the 1970s, Yogi came back and things started to get weird. The early 70s saw an explosion in the popularity of environmentalism and various new pushes for kids' TV shows to promote positive messages in addition to fun and games. And Hanna-Barbera was all over it. In 1972, Yogi and most of the other talking animal characters united for the first time in the TV movie Yogi's Ark-Lark, in which they all took off in a giant flying boat in an attempt to escape the looming threat of pollution. It's been a while since I've watched this all the way through, but I remember its heart being in the right place, but it's really preachy and it's weird seeing characters who mainly existed for slapstick suddenly trying to be serious and learn about social responsibility. I don't think you can get this on DVD, and there's probably a good reason for that. The main function that Ark-Lark served was as a continuity crossover meeting point. It was the first time that all of the talking animal Hanna-Barbera characters, including a more grown-up oriented primetime character named Top Cat, had been depicted as sharing the same universe. In addition, the presence of Sawtooth the Beaver connected it to the infamous 1968 series, Wacky Races. In any case, the movie spun off into a 1973 series called Yogi's Gang, where the animals used the Ark to fly around the world fighting pollution-themed supervillains. And if you thought Captain Planet had some lame enemies, you've never met Lotta Litter, the Greedy Genie, or my personal favorite, Mr. Bigot, who had a ray gun that turns you into a racist. After that came 1977's Laugh Olympics, a kind of sports-themed takeoff on the Wacky Races concept with Yogi as team captain of the Yogi Yahooies. On the same token, a year later he was also participating in Yogi's Space Race, quite literally Wacky Races in space. What significant cultural event could have made Hanna-Barbera decide Yogi needed to be in space? Maybe that suspiciously familiar title font knows the answer. Yeah. Space Race got its own spin-off, Galaxy Goof-Ups, once again starring Yogi. Oh, you know who else Hanna-Barbera had inexplicably shot into space around the same time frame? Casper the Friendly Ghost, who played guardian angel to a pair of female space cops in Casper and the Angels. It's best just not to ask. That show spun off into a special called Casper's First Christmas, which wound up being a Casper-Yogi team-up vehicle. Yogi then handled the next 2 years of Christmas specials on his own. The flying Ark concept got dusted off yet again in 1985 for Yogi's Treasure Hunt, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, followed by 5 more TV movies throughout the 80s and early 90s. In 1988, the new Yogi Bear show tried to revive the classic Jellystone Park formula with mixed results. Sadly, much of Yogi's run as a TV institution came to a somewhat less than stellar end in the 90s. The kiddie variety show Wake, Rattle, and Roll featured Yogi and other Hanna-Barbera mainstays in the Fender Bender 500, yet another reboot of the Wacky Races idea. Finally, the death knell was sounded by Yo Yogi, which retooled various Hanna-Barbera animal characters into a group of crime-solving teenage mall dwellers. Great. Today, save for a pair of surreal animated shorts from John Kricfalusi in the late 90s, Yogi and Friends survive mostly as merchandise nostalgia properties and in continuing reruns on cable channels like Boomerang. Interestingly, one of his most enduring legacies is the chain of licensed family camping resorts all branded as Jellystone Park. Starting way back in 1969, there are now about 70 of these places with costumed Yogi characters as mascots. And yeah, there was also that live-action movie last year, but I'm going to give this episode a happy ending by not talking about that. At all. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.